In response to the Kavanaugh hearings, Fair tweeted that white men on the Senate Judiciary Committee should be killed. They should be castrated and their bodies fed to pigs. Not making that up. Read the tweet. It's on the screen. Georgetown University was asked about this. They didn't care. She apparently is the only person at Georgetown with free speech rights. Twitter has suspended her account briefly. Asra Nomani is a former Georgetown professor. Fair once publicly denounced her as a Nazi enabler for voting for Donald Trump. Asra Nomani joins us tonight. What do you make of this? Were you surprised? Never really seen anything like this. These aren't political opinions. There are summons to violence and mutilation. Were you surprised?
Well, I've long known for the last 2 years, since Election Day 2016, that she was, part of this extremist left that sadly has found new power in America. I confronted her on her own smears against me, and she felt like she had a self-righteous indignation that she was allowed to express all of this. What particularly disturbed me about her latest attack is that she's an expert on South Asia, and she knows that this is exactly what the Afghan Taliban did to a former president of Afghanistan named Najibullah. They castrated him, they hung him so that they could terrorize the people of Afghanistan. And so for me, what she is tweeting is not just a simple, single, troubling remark, but part of this larger dynamic that we faced over the last 2 years that I considered an extremist, alt-left insurgency in America that is trying to topple this government with any means necessary. And we see it from this bird dogging, strategy that they've got, cornering senators and congressmen in the elevators. This has been 2 years in the making, and I didn't get to hear your earlier segment, but all of the players here are the same ones that marched on the day after President Trump's inauguration. They were all funded by the Open Society Foundation, as you mentioned, by billionaire George Soros, who unfortunately couldn't get his candidate, Hillary Clinton, into office. And so for the last 2 years, they have been empowered time and time again to try to topple our government by any means necessary. And this is disturbing.
So you're describing an activist group using radical means for cheap political ends. I buy that completely. What baffles me is why longstanding institutions like Georgetown University, which has a lot of alumni and reasonable people who work there, or the Washington Post, which wrote a piece defending Professor Fair tonight, why are they defending calls to violence all of a sudden?
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's this double standard that anybody who agrees with you and is inside your tribe is okay, no matter what they say. But if somebody is outside your tribe, then they are fair game to take down. And so, last week, I was here at the Capitol from midnight to try to get a seat at the hearing because I wanted to decide for myself who was telling the truth, what was the reality. Well, I was number 3 in line, and I couldn't get a seat because they had all been given away. One of which was given to the actress, that was sitting behind Judge Kavanaugh. What we face today are people who are going into these hearing rooms, people who are going into our democracy with not the idea of civil society that we had always hoped would run our country, but an insurgency. And that is so disturbing to me and distressing.
Ooh, your words are distressing to me because I know they are true. Professor, thanks a lot for joining us today. I appreciate it. I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to try to bring people into balance.
Of course. We are for balance.
Yeah.
Victor Davis Hanson is one of the smartest people we know. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, and he joins us tonight. You're one of the few guests. I would just ask, what's your assessment of what is happening right now tonight?
Well, I think that with all these incidents of professors saying certain things and asymmetrical treatment toward them, we're starting to see that if you're conservative and you are zealous in expression about the Kavanaugh hearings, it's a window into your dark soul. If you're progressive, it's proof of your zealousness for righteous indignation. But it's illustrative, Tucker, that the values of the campus are no longer esoteric or irrelevant. They've been transmogrified right into the Congress.
Exactly.
Right into the heart of American governance. We saw at Yale or Berkeley students rush Professor Christakis at Yale, but now we're seeing the same thing with Jeff Flake. Lindsey Graham said he felt it was dangerous to walk to the Senate. And we're starting to see Cory Booker, I couldn't believe it. He said, "I believe your truth," to Dr. Ford. And I thought, wait a minute, there is one truth that we find through a cross-examination, witnesses, testimonies. They're not just equal narratives, but that's exactly what the university preaches in postmodern English department, that there's a variety of truths and you can pick which one you want and they become valid depending on access to power, race, class, or gender. We still have, and we have the same idea of prolonged adolescence, where we have these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that we invent things like microaggressions, trigger warnings, safe space so they won't be hurt. These are people whose great-grandfathers were dying in places like Guadalcanal and Okinawa at 18, and yet now in the Congress we're not supposed to be too aggressive in cross-examination, or we don't want to pursue certain lines of examination because we've confused the entire idea of being sincere with being credible. Dr. Ford was sincere and she was empathetic, but that did not translate into being credible. Credibility is established by evidence, cross-examination, testimony, and the messy process of cross-examination. And it's not established by considering the accused guilty or relying on hearsay or not knowing any of the key details that might adjudicate who is telling the truth or not. So the campus is in the Congress, and that's a scary idea.
So let me just very quickly, this is almost a rhetorical question, but conservatives have fought for 40 years to lower marginal tax rates. I think that's a virtuous thing to work toward. But they spent almost no time at all trying to reclaim college campuses for education. Should they have?
Yeah, I think they should have. I think that when they give money, and a lot of very wealthy people give money at the universities, they should target that donation. The worst thing you can do is throw gasoline onto a fire by getting your name on a building and not knowing how your money is going to be spent. We need to look at a lot of medieval practices, from tenure to the admissions processes, which are not transparent. And it's a protected institution. It's time that we put a little light on it and see if it follows the practices of due process.
It's time to nail 95 theses to the front door of Harvard. I totally agree with that. Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.